Hello everyone, Yeva is here from simplyyeva.com, and I wanted to do a short kind of training, if you will, today. And if you find it enjoyable, if you like it, if you find it useful, we can do this every week. So the idea was born when I received a few questions, and actually I received them on a regular basis, but this was one person in particular, a new teacher asked me, how do you stop students, or do you stop from speaking their first language? And isn't ESL meant to have them speak in English? So I'm going to talk about this a little bit. It could be a long topic, but I promised that it will be 10 minutes or so, and I'm going to try to stick to this timeline. So for those of us who have been in the field, we know the value of first language in the classroom and with the students. Those of us who are new to teaching English language learners may have questions whether we should be using our first language. So one thing is very important, and we need to set it straight. The first language, or L1, language 1, is an asset and not a problem. For some reason, I encounter so many teachers thinking that it's a language problem. I don't know what it is, but somehow people think that if you don't speak English right away, when you just arrive here, it's somehow a problem. So here are a few things that are super important. So number one, using the student's first language in the classroom, especially for newcomers, it's absolutely necessary. It's a survival for them, okay? So let's say school routines, classroom procedures, they need to know what's going on. So we are teaching English through the medium of their first language. Also, the first language support, whether it's through Google Translate or whether it is through any other translation object, or maybe even the teacher is bilingual in the student's language, helps provide the sense of security for the student, and that already facilitates learning. Also, just imagine yourself, like if you were plopped in another country where you don't speak the language at all, and nobody wanted to help you out, and they said, well, speak, I don't know, Turkish, Swahili, whatever. Just try to put yourself in the student's shoes and to see where they're coming from. But for beginners and newcomers, it is first language support is absolutely necessary. Also, research shows that strategic use of first language is very important. It actually helps you're welcome, Jennifer. Actually helps the development of the second language, okay? So if the student already has the concepts in their first language, and we're explaining to them in English, and then we can translate the concept to them. They already have the concept, and then they can talk about it in English or demonstrate their knowledge or use whatever English they have to express it. At the same time, it is also important to set the boundaries. Even just today, for example, I have a group of sixth graders. Well, first of all, they're very challenging, but second of all, 3 out of 5 sixth graders speak, the same language, and in this case, it's Turkish. I did have to tell them, they yap between themselves, and I love hearing it. And then it's really nice that one of them who speaks more English helps the other one who doesn't speak more English. But today I gave them a task, and I said 10 minutes English only. And it was interesting to see that they all understand, they all know, but the automaticity kicks in, and they start speaking in their first language, and then say, oh, oops, I forgot. So giving little bursts of, let's say, first language, especially when they already have the basic communicative competence, it really helps with the limit. Another one is when I have a high school student, I may have mentioned it in my other video, but I'm just going to repeat it if anything. I had a high school student last year, two sisters, and one of them didn't speak any English, and the other one was very, very well versed in English, and the sister translated everything to the other one, and I did not see as much progress in the language development of the one that didn't speak much English. So using first language is very good, especially, when they're just new, but also just giving a little bit of limits just so that we can see the progress, because our end goal is to help them learn English, especially if they are learning English as a second language in an English-speaking environment. So as I mentioned, you can use the L1 for helping students understand instructions, classroom instructions or assignment instructions. Also for connecting vocabulary. Like in science, it is very difficult to sometimes to express and to explain concepts. So if a student understands the concept and then can connect that concept that they already know with the word that is in English, that helps them a lot more, and the learning is much more productive in this case. Also, it is very, very important, and I also feel very strongly about it when you talk to the parents of your students, to keep the native language at home, basically because the first language helps the students feel safe, helps with their identity, helps them know their place in the world, express the basic needs, and also aids in the second language acquisition. I have parents who come in, we're going to speak English. And sometimes I don't want to say, but sometimes the parents don't speak English very well. And it is better that they use their home language, their native language, what feels more comfortable to them, as opposed to forcing English. And sometimes students may learn it incorrectly, and then it is very difficult to unlearn. So viewing this first language as an asset, encourage the parents to keep the culture and keep their language. You can also allow the students to it depends on the age. But you probably could let the students be like the ambassadors or like the ethnographers and give them a task of noticing what are the similarities and what are the differences between the two languages, how people express, are they expressions that are similar or different? Basically, just to kind of like notice, as I tell my students, when we learn new vocabulary, you go out there and you notice the new words right away. So it's the same with just general language and general language usage. Also, when students, a lot of teachers give journal writing at the beginning of the class, or when they want to reinforce an idea. So they write a topic or display a topic on the board, and it seems that everybody's supposed to answer. Now, what does a student who doesn't speak English, doesn't know how to express themselves in English because they're just starting out, what is the student to do? It is perfectly fine for that student to use first language to write in that first language, or even take notes when they need to, from a textbook or from a book. And then that will build a bridge for them to start expressing themselves in English. And then one of the final points that I wanted to make about first language usage, it's how to reach out to parents. So a lot of parents, what we hear from teachers, parents don't respond, parents don't come, don't volunteer, don't this, don't that. But I'm trying to take a step back and to think, especially in those districts where there are few ESL students, parents probably get the information in English, or the language is rare, and the communication is that it's constant. work in progress, how to communicate with parents. So if there's instruction in the ways of school for parents, let's say either through parent night or community night, that way it will bring, you know, school home and home to school, and it will be learning for all parties, including us teachers. And so these are the main points that I kind of wanted to touch upon. Also, there are different situations. So I'm talking mostly about the immersion programs where students are learning English in an English-speaking environment. And this is my bread and butter, and this is what I do. It is much more difficult to curb, let's say, or to limit first language when there are English as a foreign language studies. So let's say you are in a different country and you're learning English, or it's similar to like you live in America and you study Spanish, okay? So those would be probably you would want more restrictions on first language usage, because your goal is to practice English at least for the time being that you are with your students. So that is all. I'm at 11 minutes, and I hope I helped you out, and I hope you found this useful. And ask your questions, shoot me some ideas, and I will do more of these 10-minute trainings depending on the demand. Thank you very much for all of you who watched, and I will see you next week.